Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 25 of ōrvadu. As I mentioned last time, 24 and 25, they're a pair of verses. They really have to be read together. So I will start by briefly talking about verse 24 again. What Bhagavan said in verse 24 was, Irakum īkayal īsa jīvagal, oru mundīpaṟa, upādhi unavei veru undīpaṟa. What that means is, Irakum īkayal, by existing nature, īsa jīvagal, God and soul, oru they are one substance. That is what they essentially are in their nature, in their existing nature, in their nature, mere existence. They are just one substance. What he means by irakum īkayal, that is referring to what he said in the previous verse, where he pointed out that our real nature is awareness, which is what actually exists. That is what he said in the previous verse, in verse 23 was, because of the non-existence of any awareness other than what exists. To be aware of what exists is awareness. That is, if awareness were something other than what exists, it would be a non-existent awareness, in which case it couldn't be aware of anything. And if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be aware. And if what exists was something other than awareness, it would not know its own existence, so it would be known only by some awareness other than itself. That is, then it wouldn't be what actually exists, because its existence would then depend upon whatever awareness is aware of its existence. So his conclusion is, because there cannot be any awareness other than what exists, to know what exists is awareness. And what is that awareness? He concludes the verse by saying, awareness alone exists as we. That is, what actually exists is awareness, and it is ourself. That is, so we are what exists and what is aware. That is, we are Satchit. Satchit means existence, awareness. So it's that Satchit that Bhagavan is referring to in verse 24, when he says irakum īkayal, by existing nature. And it is also that which he refers to as oru. That is only one substance. That one substance is that Satchit, which is the existing nature, the fundamental being of both God and Jiva. What makes us as a Jiva seem to be different from God is that is, what is our existing nature? Our existing nature is Satchit, awareness of our own existence. That is what we are always aware of as I am. When we say I am, but what I am explicitly means is I exist. But it also implies awareness, because only what is aware can be aware of its own existence. So I is the first person pronoun. I always refers to what is aware, because only what is aware can know itself as I. So I am implies the existence of ourself as awareness. So that I am, what is shiny in us as I am, that is God. That is our existing nature, and that is the one real substance. But now we are not aware of us. We are aware of ourselves as I am, but we're not aware of ourselves as just I am. We're aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person. This body here in this context refers to all the five sheaths. That is, whenever we're aware of ourselves as a body, we're not aware only of a physical form. we are aware of, that is, we're never aware of a dead body as I, so it's always a living body. So there's a physical form of a life, and it's also a body that seems to be awake. Even in dream, the body that we have seems to be a waking body. In a waking body, not only is there life functioning, there's also mind, intellect, and will functioning. So we experience all these 5 sheaths collectively as ourself. So it's these 5 sheaths that Bhagavan refers to as body when he says ego is that which is always aware of itself as I am this body. So what he refers to in this verse 24, as jiva, the soul, is ego. That is that which is mistakenly aware of itself as I am this body. So the adjuncts he's referring to here are everything that we add to I am, everything that we conflate with I am. Now we're aware I am, but instead of being aware of just I am, we mistake I am to be a body. We think our existence and our awareness seem that in our experience, they seem to be limited to this body. So it is this awareness of adjuncts that separates us from the pure awareness that we actually are. That pure awareness I am, that is God. So this is what he said in verse 24. Then how can we know God? Logically, it follows on from verse 24. But since it's adjuncts that make us seem to be different from God, if we know ourselves without adjuncts, that is knowing God. Because God is our own real nature. He's that which is always shining in us as I am. So this is precisely what Bhagavan says in verse 25. What he says in verse 25 is, tāṉ-āy upādhiviṭu, ōrvadu, tāṉ-īśaṉ, taṉṇai yuṇarvadām. Tāṉ-āy yuṇarvadām mundīpaṟa, tāṉ-āy oḷirvadāl mundīpaṟa. What that means is, tāṉ-āy upādhiviṭu. Upādhiviṭu, we can take it as without upādhis, but literally it means leaving upādhis, so, or separating ourselves from upādhis. Taṉṇai means oneself. Separating from that, ōrvadu means knowing. So knowing oneself separate from the upādhis, or distinct from the upādhis, or without upādhis, having left upādhis, that itself, ōrvadu tāṉ means itself here. īśaṉ taṉṇai yuṇarvadām. That itself is knowing God. So knowing ourselves without adjuncts, or separating ourselves from adjuncts and then knowing ourselves in their absence, that is knowing God. Why? He gives the answer in the final line, tāṉ-āy oḷirvadāl. Because, that literally means because of it shining as oneself. That implies because God is always shining as ourself. So what is shining within us as our real nature, as our fundamental awareness I am, that is God. So if we know ourselves without adjuncts, that is knowing God. So instead of knowing ourselves as I am this body, if we know ourselves as just I am, that is knowing God. That is what Bhagavan's, that's the simple and direct meaning here. As always with Bhagavan's verses, we can draw out implications, but that is, we can draw inferences. What Bhagavan implies in the verse, the implications of what Bhagavan is saying here. That is, since from what he said in the previous verse, when he said that God and soul are one substance, the implication is that God is our real nature. God is what we actually are. So why are we not aware of ourselves as we actually are? Because we have conflated mixed and conflated ourselves with adjuncts. If we know ourselves without adjuncts, that is knowing ourselves as we really are. So what he refers to here is knowing God. It implies knowing ourselves as we really are, because God is what is shining as ourself. God is what is shiny as ourself means he's shiny as what we actually are, as our real nature. So that fundamental awareness I am, that is God. If we know I am without conflating it with adjuncts, that is knowing God. That is knowing our real nature. That is knowing Brahman. That is knowing the ultimate reality. That is knowing our real nature. There were some other things I thought of to say, but they just my mind's gone blank. So I think that's the basic meaning of the verse. If you like to ask any questions, it maybe come to my mind what other things I wanted to say about it.
So, upadhi, Michael, adjunct is the best word that they use. Yes. You agree with that?
Yeah, it's the simplest term to use in English to convey the meaning, but actually there's a lot more. This is, now I remember, this is one of the things I wanted to say. That is, upadhi. Upadhi is a term that has many meanings, depending on the context in which it's used. One of the meanings is a substitute, something that's put in the place of another thing. So now this body consisting of 5 sheaths, we are taking this to be ourselves. So it's a substitute. It's a substitute for what we actually are. Upadhi also means a disguise. It means an appearance, a phantom, particularly an illusory appearance. It means, as I say, disguise. It also means a deception. Anything that is mistaken for something other than what it's, something that is seen in the place of what is actually there. So, if, for example, if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, the snake is an upadhi. It's a deception. It's not what's actually there. What's actually there is only a rope, but it's mistaken to be a snake. It can also mean attribute or a distinguishing property. So this is where the English word adjunct comes closest to it. But yeah, I think adjunct does convey the meaning. It's something that is added to it, but there's no one word in English that adequately conveys the meaning of upadhi. But as I say, you can take it as adjunct, we can take it as disguise, we can take it as deceptive appearance. As I say, in different contexts, it has different meanings. In some contexts, it can mean a defining quality. So we now define ourselves as this person, which is not what we actually are. We limit ourselves as if we were this person. I think limitation is also, I have a feeling, another meaning of, yes, limitation or qualification is another meaning of upadhi. So it has a whole range of meanings. In the Tamil lexicon, they give the meaning of, they don't so much give the philosophical meaning, but they do mention appearance or phantom. And then in Tamil, mayayal undahum totram, an appearance that arises due to maya. That's in the Tamil lexicon. In Sanskrit dictionaries, they give a broader range of meaning. It's a Sanskrit word, and in Sanskrit, it's used in many different senses and in many different contexts. But in this context, it means what we mistake ourselves to be. Yeah, and what particularly when Bhagavan explained it very simply, that is the pure awareness I am, that is our real nature. When that is mixed and conflated with adjuncts, with upadhis, And the upadhis being this body, that mixed awareness, I am this body, that is what is ego. Ego is always aware of itself, not just as I am, but as I am this body. This body is the adjunct that Bhagavan is referring to there. But body, as I say, Bhagavan clarifies in verse 5 of oḻirvadāl, when he uses the term body in this context, he's referring not just to the physical form, he's referring to all the 5 sheaves. Udal pancha kosa uru, he says in verse 5 of oḻirvadāl. Udal pancha kosa uru, adalal aindum udal ennum sollil odungam. That the body is a form of 5 sheaths, therefore all 5 are included in the term body. That's what he says there. So when Bhagavan talks about body in the context of ego being that which identifies itself with the body, he's referring to all the 5 sheaths. In other words, the person we take ourselves to be, because generally in English, when we use the term body, we're generally referring just to the physical body. When we use the term person, we're referring to the whole package, the body, the mind, etc. So the whole person, that is the physical form, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will. That is, all these 5 together are the bundle of adjuncts that we must take to be ourselves.
So, Michael, and then another point I wanted to check with you is, so this verse says, tāṉ-āy upādhiviṭ, meaning leaving aside or leaving aside the adjunct that I am the body sense, and then ōrvadu, so sort of focusing on ourselves, right? tāṉ-īśaṉ uṇarvadām is realizing God. So my question is that, but I think the primary clause here is ōrvadu, right? Because the other one will automatically follow. And I see
this is coming close to the other thing I was going to say. How to know ourselves without adjuncts? How to that is upādhiviṭ. Viṭṭu is an adverbial participle that means leaving or separating. So how to separate ourselves? Now we are so intimately, we experience ourselves so intimately mixed with this body and mind, this bundle of 5 sheaths. How can we separate ourselves from these things? How can we distinguish ourselves from these things? Because ego is this mixed awareness I am. In this mixed awareness, what is real is only I am. The adjuncts, namely the body, is not real. It's just a transitory appearance. We can see this from our own experience. We are aware of ourselves as I am in all 3 states, but we are aware of ourselves as this particular body in this waking state. In dream, we're aware of ourselves as some other body. But so we cannot be either of these bodies. In sleep, we're aware of ourselves without being aware of any body whatsoever. So since we are aware of ourselves without any body in sleep, the body cannot be what we actually are. So what is real is only this fundamental awareness I am. Everything, all the adjuncts are things that appear and disappear. And they appear as soon as we rise as ego, they disappear as soon as we subside back into our source in sleep. So what is real is only I am. So how to separate ourselves from what is unreal? Only by clinging to I am. So it's only by this practice of self-investigation that we can, in other words, by clinging to that fundamental awareness I am, that we can separate ourselves from these adjuncts. This that reminds me, another thing I wanted to connect with this is verse 16 of Upadēśa Undiyār. What Bhagavan says in verse 16 is, he uses the same the same adverbial participle viṭṭu, which means leaving or separating. What he says in verse 16 is, veli videangale viṭṭu, leaving external phenomena. Manam tāṉ-āy oli uru or ordale, the mind knowing its own oḷirvadā literally means form of light. That implies its own fundamental awareness. That is, light is here used as a metaphor for awareness. So the mind knowing its fundamental awareness, that's the awareness is its own form of awareness, that's a fundamental awareness I am, leaving or separating itself from veli-videangale. Here, the main, the subject of this, and he goes on to say that knowing one's own form of light is uṇmei unicī. Uṇmei unicī means real awareness. So the subject of this sentence is manam tāṉ-āy uru ordale, the mind knowing its own form of light. Leaving external phenomena is an adverbial clause. So if we don't have to, that is, these are not two separate actions. When we fall asleep, for example, we cease knowing any external phenomena, but we don't know ourselves. But when we are practicing self-investigation, how do we leave external phenomena? By attending only to ourselves. The more we cling to our oḷirvadā, that fundamental awareness I am, the more the external phenomena will recede into the background. That is, we are withdrawing by focusing our attention on ourselves, we are thereby withdrawing it from everything else. And if we attend to ourselves keenly enough, but we thereby withdraw our attention completely from all other things, because we are focusing it on ourselves, then we will experience ourselves as pure awareness. Pure awareness means awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself. And that pure awareness is what he refers to here as uṇmei unicī. So if we read this verse 25, along with this verse 16, the parallels become clear. That is, the upādhis, they are external phenomena. That is, everything other than ourself is external to ourselves. And so all these five sheaths, the body, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will, these are all objects experienced by us. That is, the body is obviously an object. The life, we're aware of this body is not a dead body. We're aware of it being a living body. Why? Because it's breathing and the heart is beating and all these things. So we're aware of the body as an object, the life is an object. The mind, consisting of thoughts and memories and perceptions and so on, is an object. The intellect that discriminates and judges is that those are all functions perceived by us, so that is an object. And the will consists of vasanas, and the sprouted form of vasanas are what are called likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. So all these are objects experienced by us. So being objects, they are external to ourselves, because objects are things that appear and disappear in our awareness. So they are something distinct from ourselves. So they are all these five sheaths are what he refers to in verse 16 as veli-videangale, external phenomena. That doesn't mean all external phenomena are, the upādhis are a certain set of all the external phenomena that we experience. We experience many external phenomena. This particular set of external phenomena, the body consisting of five sheaths, are those phenomena that we mistake to be ourselves. So when Bhagavan says in verse 16, leaving external phenomena, he's including within those external phenomena, among those external phenomena, are the body consisting of five sheaths, which are what he refers to here as adjuncts. So in both of these verses, he's talking about leaving things which are extraneous to ourselves. And Whereas in verse 16, he talks about the mind knowing its own form of light. Here he talks about tāṉ-āy ōrvadu, knowing oneself. Knowing oneself here, knowing oneself, that is, knowing oneself without adjuncts. Without adjuncts, what are we? We are just that fundamental awareness I am, which is what he referred to in verse 16 as oḷirvadā. So that is this the subject of that is in verse 16. There's the subject is manam tāṉ oḷirvadā ōrdale, the mind knowing its own form of light, and there's an adverbial clause qualifying that knowing, leaving external phenomena. That is, we don't have to leave external phenomena separately. If we know our own form of light, that is, we are automatically leaving the external phenomena, because we're withdrawing our attention from all other things in order to focus it on ourselves. Likewise here, the subject of the sentence is tāṉ-āy ōrvadu, and it's just a tāṉ-āy ōrvadu parallels to oḷirvadā ōrdale, and upādhiviṭ parallels to viṭṭu. So that's the subject. There he says that is uṇarvadu. Here he says it is īśaṉ tāṉ-āy oneself. It is knowing God. No, in other words, the implication is that knowing God, that is real awareness, because God is nothing other than ourselves. So knowing ourselves, knowing nothing other than ourselves alone is pure awareness, alone is real awareness. We always know ourselves. There is never a moment when we are not aware I am. The problem is that we have mixed ourselves with adjuncts. So though we know I am, we don't know ourselves as we actually are. We know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So this verse 25 is very, very closely parallel to verse 16.
So that
I think you've reminded me of the two other things that I wanted to talk about in more detail. One is what is meant by the term upādhi, and the other most important one is this, the parallel between this verse and verse 16.
That word viṭṭu occurs in both, and that's when I started seeing the connection between the two. And then thanks for mentioning that. And I think it is so important when with regards to practice, that with the jnana practice as taught by Bhagavan, and as I understand it, it's the focus is on self-attention, and automatically everything else follows. The leaving aside the external phenomena leaving the adjunct, everything else follows. So our job is to just focus on the self.
That's why he says in tāṉā, in the 11th paragraph of tāṉ, he says very, very explicitly, Oruban taṇ-sārupate adeyam varayal, until one attains one's own nature, nirantara swarupa smaranaya kaipatravanayan. If one holds fast to uninterrupted swarupa smarana, adu andre podam, that alone is sufficient. Swarupa smarana literally means remembrance of our real nature. What is our real nature? Only that fundamental awareness I am. So the implication here is all we need to do is cling firmly to I am until we experience ourselves as we actually are. Clinging firmly to I am, that alone is sufficient. Nothing else is required.
Right. Thank you.
If that is, we don't have to take great trouble to get rid of what is unreal. All we need to do, hold on to what is real, and the unreal will automatically slip off.
Exactly.
The unreal is there because we're holding on to it. That is, none of these things, this body consisting of 5 sheaths and all these other external phenomena, why do they seem to be there? because we're holding on to them. That is, we are the ones who are grasping them. As Bhagavan said, that grasping nature, that nature to grasp form, that is the very nature of ego. In verse 25 of Upadēśa, he says, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Viṭṭu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So the very nature of ego is to grasp form. Form means anything other than ourselves. All these 5 sheaths are forms. All phenomena are forms. So the mind, the nature of ego is always to grasp form. Those forms are things other than itself. So long as it's grasping things other than itself, it's thereby nourishing and sustaining itself. Instead of grasping other things, if it tries to grasp itself, Tedinal autompidicum. If sought, it takes flight. There, if sought means if it holds on to that fundamental awareness I am. By holding on to that fundamental awareness I am, everything else will slip off. And in the absence of everything else, where is ego? Ego is only seems to exist so long as it's holding on to other things. When it lets go of other things and holds on to itself, it merges back into its source.
Right.
So Bhagavan's teachings are so simple. And whatever he's taught us, it's all pointing back at this. Bhagavan's teachings are extremely practical. Whatever he taught, all has practical implications. And the practice that they're all in play is this simple practice of self-attentiveness, of holding fast to I am. There's nothing more to it than that. But why? Because what is real is only I am. Why the whole... How can we know what is real? By holding anything that is unreal. We need to hold what is real. That's the way to know what is real. What is real is only I am.
Thank you, Michael. So there was this question posted from by Sandy Vipushanan. He's asking, does the term body includes mind also?
Yes, that's what I said. It includes, when Bhagavan uses the term body in this context, he's referring to all the 5 sheaths. As I said in verse 5 of Upadēśa, he said, Udal Panchakosa Uru. I mean, the body is a form of 5 sheaths. Adalal Aindum Udal Ennum Sollil Adungam. Therefore, all 5 are included in the term body. Those 5 are the body. That means the physical form of the body, of a stula sarira, the life or prana, the pranamaya kosha. The stula sarira is called annamaya kosha. Annamaya kosha means the sheath consisting of food, sheath composed of food. Because this body it's a material body, composed of material food. Pranamaya kosha means the sheath composed of life. So in other words, the life, that life is manifest in the form of breath and heart, that is heartbeat and all the physiological functions. These physiological functions, these are all the manifestation, that is, life manifests in the form of these physiological functions. So that is the pranamaya kosha. The manomaya kosha, the mind, means all the grosser functions of the mind. Perceiving, remembering, thinking, all these gross feeling, emotions, all these things, these are the grosser functions of the mind. That is called manomaya kosha. The vijnanamaya kosha, the sheath of intellect, that is the buddhi. That is the mind is sometimes described as the antakarana, the inner organ, and it is said to consist of 4 parts. Those 4 parts are manam, manas, chittam, manas, buddhi, chittam, and ahankaram. Manas means the manamaya kosha, the grosser functions of the mind. Buddhi means the vijnanamaya kosha. That's all the subtler function. That is the discriminating, discerning, distinguishing, judging, reasoning. These are all functions of the intellect. That is the buddhi or the vijnanamaya kosha. The chittam means the will. That is the anandamaya kosha, the sheath consisting of happiness, which is said also called the karana sarira. Why is it called the karana sarira? Karana means cause. So it's a causal body, because the will, the chittam, or karana sarira, consists of vasanas. Vasanas are all likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on in their seed form. Vasanas means inclinations. So the inclinations that give rise to all likes, dislikes, desires, and so on are what Bhagavan refers to as Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya means object or phenomena. So our inclination to attend to or be aware of or to experience anything other than ourselves, any object or any phenomena, those are Vishaya vasanas. Those Vishaya vasanas are what sprout in the form of likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, aversions, fears, and so on. So that is the chittam, or the anandamaya kosha. The fourth of the four antakaranas is ego. That doesn't correspond to any of the five sheaths, because ego is that which takes all the five sheaths to be itself. That is ego. All the five sheaths are objects. Ego is the subject. The subject is that which is aware of these five sheaths as I am this. So the function of ego is this identification, this abhimanam, this attaching itself to these five sheaths, taking these five sheaths to be itself. That is the function of ego. So that is the subtlest of all the four antakaranas. So as I say, that all these five sheaths, all the other four, three of the four these five sheaths include three of the four antakaranas, and they are all objects. Ego is not an object, it's the subject. And it's the subject that takes these five sheaths to be itself. Because its function is said to be abhimanam. Abhimanam means attachment or identification. It lays claim to all these things as this is me. I am this body. I am alive. I am thinking. I am discriminating. I'm reasoning. I'm judging. I like this. I like that. I want this. That is it identifies itself with the will also, and takes all these. So all when we rise as ego, we take all these five collectively as ourself. We don't see ourselves as five different parts. We experience all these collectively as ourself.
So body,
because they are one entire package.
So body includes everything, all the five sheaths.
All the five sheaths, yes. As I say, it's what we normally refer to as a person, When we say I am this person, we are identifying ourselves not just with the physical body, with the entire package. That's what Bhagavan means by the term body in this context. So when he says ego is dehatma buddhi means the awareness of the body as oneself. That is ego. What he's referring to there as body, deha, is all these five sheaths.
Thank you. Shrikant, actually, it's a good question. Please, can you please go ahead, unmute?
Kumar, I think it's better you ask. I don't know whether I'm asking it the right way.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I'll do it. So what he's asking is, which faculty of our being eventually helps us realize the ultimate truth? Would this be a tiny concept deeply hidden in our will?
Will is essential because that will is a karana sarira. But whose will is it? It is ego's will. So we as ego, why we are, that is what is required, is that we surrender ourselves. If we surrender ourselves, we'll merge back into the source from which we rose. Why are we unwilling to surrender ourselves? Because of our vishaya vasanas, our inclination to experience other things. So long as we have our vishaya vasanas are strong, we are unwilling to let go of those other things. So long as we're not willing to let go of those other things, we will not know what we actually are. In order to know what we actually are, we need to hold only on to I am, thereby let go of everything else. That is surrendering ourselves. So in order to investigate and thereby surrender ourselves, we need to hold only on to I am. In order to hold only on to I am, we must be willing to let go of other things. So the Vishaya vasanas are all those inclinations to be aware of anything other than ourselves. But there's another type of vasana, what Bhagavan referred to as sat vasana. Sat vasana means, sat means being. So the inclination to know and to be what we actually are, that is sat vasana. Sat vasana is what is otherwise known as bhakti, particularly swatma bhakti, love for one's own real nature. So as Bhagavan always said, bhakti is the mother of jnana. Bhagavan often said bhakti is the mother of jnana. Why? Because without all-consuming love, we will not be willing to investigate and surrender ourselves, and so we cannot know ourselves. So love is the key. Why all the problems now is our love for this world, our love for things other than ourselves, our desires, our attachments, the seeds of which are these vishaya vasanas. In order to surrender ourselves, we need to weaken all our vishaya vasanas and strengthen our sat vasana, our love to know and to be what we actually are. These to the extent that we strengthen our sat vasana, we are thereby weakening our vishaya vasana, because they're inclinations in two opposite directions. Vishaya vasana is the inclinations to go outwards, away from ourselves. Sat vasana is the inclination to go back within, back towards ourselves. So ultimately, this whole spiritual path is a battle within our own will. Bhagavan said, there's a verse in Guru Vachakavai where Murugan recorded this, that is, in the Puranas, there are so many stories about the battles between the devas and the asuras, between the gods and the demons. Bhagavan said, these mythological stories, these Puranic stories, what they signify is the battle between the sat vasana and the vishaya vasanas. The inclination to go within and the inclination to go outwards. This is the big battle that's going on in the life of every spiritual aspirant.
So it's a mental battle. It's a battle that goes on within us, basically.
Yes, but it's a battle that goes in the deepest of these five sheaths, which is our will. That is the Manomaya Kosha is that is it. It's the will that is driving the mind. It's the will that is driving the intellect also. That we think, I'm very rational. I only I decide everything rationally. But even the most rational person is being driven by their vasanas. This is why there are many brilliant philosophers who have completely different views. They will argue, each will argue very reasonably. They're very good at all these intellectual arguments, but ultimately what they're arguing for, they believe what they want to believe. They think, oh, no, I'm perfectly rational. I believe only what is rational. Every other philosopher believes what they consider to be rational. What we consider to be most rational is what we want to believe. So it's our will that is driving the intellect, And the intellect in turn drives the mind, and the mind drives the body, the speech and body. So everything, that is why Bhagavan says in verse 2 of Upadēśa Undiyār, what is the cause that makes us fall into this great ocean of action? It is the vasanas. That's why he says, Vinayam velevu viṭṭu. That is the fruit of karma perishes. That is, the fruit of karma means when we do any action by our will, that has a fruit. When we experience that fruit thereby perishes. But that's not the end of the story. The seed remains, the seeds of the vasanas. And he says, viṭṭu viṭṭu. So he implies there that it's the seeds that cause us to fall in the ocean of action. Those seeds are our vasanas. So that's the whole problem that we need to deal with now is our vasanas. Of course, the root of all vasanas is ego. That's the ultimate problem to be got rid of. But we cannot get rid of ego until we have weaken this vasanas to a considerable extent, because we will not be willing to surrender ourselves.
Right.
So ultimately, the tool by which we know ourselves is our power of attention. That is, it is ego who has that power of attention. But in order to use its power of attention, it must be willing to do so. That is where the will plays a vital role in this. We need to, that's why chitta-suddhi, purification of, chitta means will. Usually we translate chitta-suddhi as purification of the mind. But what are the impurities in the mind? It's our vasanas. So it's, strictly speaking, it's purification of our will. We must cease being inclined to like or to desire anything else, and we must be inclined to love only ourselves.
That's a good way to put it. So going back to the question, which faculty of our being eventually helps us realize the ultimate truth? So what is the faculty of our being? To me, the answer is consciousness, our fundamental awareness.
Yes. That is, we need the cooperation of our will, but ultimately it is only we ourselves know ourselves. No one, nothing. We cannot know ourselves by any faculty. We can know ourselves, as Bhagavan will say in the next verse, which we'll talk about next month. Knowing oneself is being oneself, or being oneself alone is knowing ourselves. So, how to be oneself? By just attending to oneself. So ultimately, it's all a matter of attention, and attention is the very nature of ego. That is the grasping, what Bhagavan refers to in verse 25 of Upadēśa, where he refers to the grasping nature of ego. That grasping nature is attention. How does this formless phantom called ego grasp forms? Only by attending to them. So how do we grasp ourselves? Only by attending to ourselves. So attention is the key.
Right.
Bhagavan often said, it's all a matter of attention. So long as we attend to things other than ourselves, we seem to be ego, and we're immersed in ignorance and in samsara, and the whole cycle of birth and death, and the wheel of karma, and all this. All that all those problems are there only so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves. The simple thing we have to do is to turn our attention back to ourselves. If we turn our attention back to ourselves, everything else drops off. But in order to turn our attention back to ourselves, we must be willing to let go of everything else. Bhagavan has said, this path of Atmavichara, this is the easiest of all paths. Ayeyati sulapam. Anmavidei ayeyati sulapam. Extremely easy. Knowing oneself, extremely easy. So it's extremely easy, this path. But we all say, it's okay for Bhagavan to say it's easy. It may be easy for him, but it's very difficult for us, we all say. Why is it difficult for us? It is not difficult. It seems difficult because we're not really willing to let go of other things. If we were willing to let go of other things, then it's extremely easy. To know something other than ourselves requires some effort because we have to direct our attention away from ourselves towards some other thing. So that's an act of knowing. But to know ourselves, no act of knowing is necessary. We need to just be ourselves. So we just need to turn our attention back to ourselves. But in order to turn our attention back to ourselves, we need to be willing to let go of other things. That is why we're purifying the mind and thereby cultivating the love to know what we actually are. That is the key. That's all at the level of the will, the chitta. So if at all we can say any faculty is necessary, it's the chittam. We can also, Bhagavan in ōrvadu, the instrument he's referred to is mati. In verse 23 of ōrvadu, he says in the final sentence, in the nān engu erum endru nun matial en. They investigate with a subtle, nun means what is subtle, refined, sharp, keen, precise, discerning. Mati can here be taken to be mind or intellect. It can also in certain senses mean will, but I mean in verse 19 he used it in the sense of will, but here it means more in the sense of intellect. But this is intellect in its very subtlest form, as that power of attention. So we need a very keen and sharp power of attention. And likewise in verse 28, he says, Erumbum ahande erumidite, niril virunda podol, kana vendi, muļirvadāl pol, kunda matial, pechu muchu adiki kondu, ulle andu aria vendum. That means like sinking, wanting to know something that has fallen in water, sinking within, restraining speech and breath by a sharpened mind, by a kundamati. It is necessary to know the place where the rising ego rises. Here, kundamatial refers to all the things he mentions here. How do we sink within? By kundamatial. How do we restrain the speech and breath? By kundamatial. How do we know the place where the rising ego rises? By kundamati. By kundamati. Kundamati. Kunda means ku means what is sharp. Kunda means sharpened or pointed, keen, acute, penetrating, discerning intellect. So we need a very sharp. Here, mati we can take as attention. So it's intellect in the sense of that power of discernment. So we need a very keen and sharp power of discernment in order to distinguish ourselves from all these adjuncts that we now mistake to be ourselves. So in order to focus our attention very keenly on ourselves, our attention needs to be very sharp and refined and subtle. Because what is the subtlest of all things is that this fundamental awareness I am. It's the clearest thing, but it's also the subtlest. So in order to grasp that I am so firmly that we thereby let go of everything else, we need a very sharp power of attention, a very sharp power of discernment. So that is the intellect at its very subtlest, it's very subtlest in its very subtlest form. Right.
Thank you, Michael. There is an anonymous question. If the body actually encompasses all the 5 sheets, how can we evaporate the ego without destroying the body?
So long as we are concerned about not destroying the body, we're attached to it. So long as we're attached to it, we cannot destroy ego. We free ourselves from this body every night when we fall asleep. So why should we be so concerned about this body? We are perfectly happy in sleep without this body. And in dream, we exist, but we are not taking this body to be I, we take some other body to be I. So long as we're dreaming, we are so attached to that dream body. If a dream body is in danger, if we're being chased by a monster, or if we're crossing a road and a car's coming fast, or if we're on the edge of a cliff or something, we are so afraid of any harm that may happen to this dream body. But why? Because we take that dream body to be I. But as soon as we wake up, whatever happened to that dream body, we're no longer concerned about it because we no longer experience it as I. Now, why are we so concerned about this body? Because we take it to be I. So long as we take it to be I, we cannot destroy ego. So we need to be willing to. Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Upadēśa Undiyār, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Everything includes this body, all the five sheaths, the world. Everything comes into existence only when we rise as ego. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Now, in the waking and dream state, we're aware of ourselves as a body, and we're consequently aware of the world. In sleep, we're aware of ourselves without being aware of any of these things. So there's no body or world in sleep, but we exist perfectly happily there. We have no problem in sleep. So all these things, all this body and world appear only when we rise as ego. In other words, only in waking and dream. In sleep, they don't exist at all. Then he says, ego itself is everything. That is, what do we see? What is this world? What is all these phenomena we see? It's just ourself we are seeing as all these things. In a dream, we see a body and a world, and they all seem to be real, and the world seems to be outside ourselves and existing independent of ourselves. But when we wake up, we recognize all those things were only our own mind. That means only our own self. We were seeing ourselves as that dream world. Likewise, we are now seeing ourselves as this dream body and dream world. But according to Bhagavan, this is just a dream. Then he concludes that verse 26 of Upadēśa by saying, Ādalal yadu idu endru nādalai ōrvadu yāvamenō. Therefore, know that investigating what this is, what this ego is giving up everything. So until we are willing to let go of everything, including our own body, we cannot know what we actually are. So this is Bhagavan's path, is a path of complete renunciation, but not outward renunciation. We don't have to become sannyasis. We don't have to go off to the Himalayas and sit in a cave or anything. But renunciation has to be in the cave of our own heart. We have to be willing to let go of everything in order to cling to what alone is real, which is I am.
So I think the questioner is thinking still as shristi-dristi, and that ego is a component of the body. But
Yes.
in fact, the truth is like the other way around. It's the ego comes first and then the body.
Yes. Only when we rise as ego do we project and experience the body as I. The body in a dream, as soon as we start dreaming, we are aware of ourselves as a body in that dream. But that body didn't exist prior to our dreaming. The body is our own mental fabrication. Likewise, this body is our own mental fabrication. This body ceases to exist when we fall asleep, according to Bhagavan. We think, oh, no, my body, though I wasn't aware of it, my body was lying on the bed. So we think, but what evidence do we have? It wasn't our experience. We are making an unjustified assumption. And then we say, oh, but I wasn't aware of it, but other people were aware of it. My husband or my wife was there. They were aware of my body. They were aware I was sleeping. When do they tell us that they were aware we were sleeping? Only in this waking state. They may also in a dream. If we ask if we ask other people in a dream, was my body still here when I was asleep? They'll say, oh yes, of course your body was still here when you were asleep. You were asleep, but we weren't asleep, they would tell us. And we all believe them until we wake up, and then we find that it was all our own dream. Those people and our body and everything was our own mental fabrication. So we need to, that is, in order to grasp what Bhagavan is talking about, we need to be willing to accept that what we are now experiencing is a dream. Advaita is taught in another way. That is what Bhagavan taught, is what is called dristi-shristi. That is the dream analogy. That is, well, not even an analogy. The dristi-shristi says, what we now take to be waking is only a dream. Dristi-shristi means perception, creation. That is, creation seems to be there because we perceive it. So the cause of creation is perception. Whereas the so-called common sense view, the view of most religions and science, and generally the so-called common sense view is the world exists there. I am born into this world. I live here for some years, and then I go away, and the world is still there. That is what is called shristi-dristi. That is the contention that the creation exists independent of my perception of it. Even in Advaita is taught in from a shristi-dristi perspective often. Why is that? Because many people are not willing to accept that this world, that our present state is a dream. Why does Bhagavan insist that this is a dream? Because Bhagavan taught Advaita for a very practical purpose, but that Bhagavan's teachings are all practice-oriented. In order to put Advaita into practice, we need to be willing to let go of everything that is unreal. So why did dilute Advaita by bringing in a roundabout shristi-dristi? That won't help us to detach ourselves from the world. So what Bhagavan taught us, the simplest and most refined form of Advaita, it's also, but why he taught the simplest and most refined form? Because it's the most practical. If we are willing to accept that this world is just a dream, it will be so much easier for us to let go of it and to turn within. So long as we're taking this world to be real, we will be unwilling to let go of it.
Right.
Though the shristi-dristi form of Advaita also says the world is just a false appearance, they give it a greater degree of reality than dream. That is, they say there are three levels of reality. There's paramarthika satya, the ultimate truth, that's ajata. There's vivaharika satya, this transactional reality of this waking state, and there's pratibhasika satya, the seeming reality of dream. So they attribute more reality to waking than to dream. Shankara, in most of his commentaries, he's argued from the perspective of shristi-dristi. Why? Because he had a mission to argue with other people who were not willing to accept this. So he had to dilute it in order to get them to accept it. But though in most of his commentaries he argues from that perspective, he also wrote a commentary on Mandukya Karika, not just on the Mandukya Upanishad, but on the Mandukya Karika written by Gaudapada. And he says, this is the essence of all, this is the ultimate teaching of Vedanta. And what does Gaudapada teach? He teaches dristi-shristi. He says, there is no Gaudapada, that there's a whole chapter in Mandukya Karika, one of the four chapters, the second of the fourth chapter, in which Gaudapada has devoted that whole chapter, or almost the whole chapter, to arguing that there's no difference between waking and dream. And he continues on the same theme in the last two chapters. So that is the ultimate, but Shankara had to dilute it not for spiritual aspirants, in order to convince other philosophers, other pundits, people who were attached to other forms of philosophy. But for spiritual aspirants, this dristi-shristi is the only practical way. Why to dilute the truth and why to complicate it? Because shristi-dristi is far more complicated than dristi-shristi, and it's unnecessarily complicated. Why to attribute reality to the things we want to let go of? Even a partial degree of reality, why to attribute it? It is wholly unreal according to Bhagavan. It's all a manokarpana. It's a fabrication of our own mind, an imagination of our own mind.
So that's why I don't like that classification. You know, the pratibhashika satya, vyavahārika satya, and paramartha satya.
It's fine, but so long as we recognize that Vyavahārika Satya is Pratibhashika Satya. That is, Vyavahārika Satya means the transactional reality. Pratibhashika means the seeming reality. The transactional reality is itself the Pratibhashika Satya. Right. So long as of course, when our attention goes outwards, we seem to be a person. And therefore we seem to be in this world, and therefore we need to transact with this world. So long as we seem to be this body needs food, it needs clothing, it needs shelter. And so we are involved in all these vivahara, in all these transactions of the waking state. But inwardly we need to understand all this is a complete, it's all it merely seems to exist. It doesn't actually exist.
So there is a
That's
question.
why Gaudapada says, and Bhagavan says the same. There are actually only two states. There's only dream and sleep. Dream, we distinguish one dream from another and say, oh, this our present dream, this is waking. All other dreams are merely dreams. But when we're in some other dream, that dream seems to be waking. So there's no difference between them at all.
Right.
And for those who argue that people find so many arguments to try and assert that our present state is not a dream. But all those arguments can be demolished by one simple question. Is there anything that you experience in this present state that you could not equally well experience in dream? There is nothing in this waking state that we could not experience in dream. In fact, in dreams, we do experience all these things. So there's no evidence whatsoever that our present state is anything other than a dream. It's merely wishful thinking. Those who are attached to this waking state, they will say, oh no, this is more real. Why? That is, as Bhagavan said, trying to foist reality upon this world is like an infatuated lover foisting chastity upon a prostitute. That is the person who's in love with a prostitute, because of his infatuation with her, in his eyes, oh, she's the purest of all pure maidens. There's no one purer than his beloved, but she's only a prostitute. Likewise, this world is wholly unreal. Because of our infatuation with it, we say, oh no, this world is very, very real. See, all the other people in this world will also bear witness that this world is real. But all those other people who bear witness, they're all part of this world. So all our arguments are just wishful thinking. All our arguments for the seeming reality, for the reality of this world, are just wishful thinking. Right. This world cannot be more real than the one who perceives the world. Who perceives the world? It is ego. If we investigate ego, we find there's no such thing. So Bhagavan has simplified it and made it so simple and so direct. And so practical.
Exactly. Thank you, Michael. So there is a question here. It relates to your comment on when you mentioned sattvasanas and vishayavasanas. So the question is, does the prarabdha then have both Vishaya and Sattvasana. And ego then uses will to accomplish the part of Prarabdha. And I think the question is more on the first part of it.
Okay.
As you just mentioned, does
Okay.
the Prarabdha then have both Vishaya and Sattvasana? I think here you have to split it out. Yeah.
Vasanas are ego's vasanas. Prarabdha doesn't have any vasanas. Prarabdha is karma pala. It is the fruit of actions. Though loosely we talk about three karmas, agamya, sanchita, and prarabdha. Two of these three karmas are not actually karmas. They're not actually actions. They are karma pala, the fruit of actions. That is, the actions we do are the agamya. That is, the actions that bear fruit are agamya. Agamya means those actions we do under the sway of our vasanas. The doer of the actions is ego. Ego acts under the sway of its Vishaya vasanas. So those actions done under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas. In other words, the actions we do according to our own will, those are agamya. Those agamya bear fruit. Those fruit get stored in what is called sanchita. Sanchita means a heap or pile, because in every lifetime, generally, we are accumulating far more fruit than we are experiencing. So the sanchita is an ever-growing pile. From that vast pile of the fruits of actions that we've done for crores of janmas, for hundreds of millions of janmas, of lives, there's so many fruit there. From that huge pile, God or Guru selects those fruit that will be most beneficial for us to experience in this lifetime. Most beneficial means not the ones that are going to give us the most trouble-free life, the ones that will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So prarabdha is the fruit of our past karmas. So prarabdha is not a karma, and it is the vasanas that are allowing ourselves to be swayed by vasanas in previous lives, or what created this fruit that we are now experiencing as prarabdha. In order to experience this prarabdha, we need to do certain actions. Those actions we will be made to do by God. That's what Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram, that is, according to the prarabdha of each person, adakanavan angangirindu artavipan. He who is for that, for that means God or Guru. Angangirindu literally means being there. That means being in every place, but it implies being in the heart of each person. Artavipan will make them dance. That is, he will make us act. So we will be made to do whatever actions are necessary for us to do in order for us to experience our prarabdha. People naively take this to mean, Bhagavan has said, God makes us do all actions. So whatever actions we do are actions we're made to do by God. Or they don't even, they forget about God. They say, it's prarabdha. All my actions are prarabdha. Prarabdha is not an action, it's a fruit of action. What we are to experience is prarabdha. It is God who makes us, God or Guru, who makes us act in accordance with our prarabdha, so to facilitate the experiencing of the prarabdha. That doesn't mean that all the actions we do are the will of God. I can't go and rob the bank and say, it's all the will of God. God made me do this. That is a very naive and incomplete understanding of the prarabdha theory. That is, prarabdha is the fruit of karma. So what is the karma that bears that fruit? It is agamya. Agamya is those actions that we do according to our own will. In other words, the actions we do under the sway of our vasanas. So it's not that prarabdha has vasanas. The vasanas belong to ego. But as ego, we have a choice. That is, vasanas means inclination. We are inclined to like this, to do this, and so on. But we are not bound by our inclinations. That is, we see this every day. We have conflicting likes. I want to do this and I want to do that. I can't do both. I have to choose between them. So we are constantly choosing which inclination to allow ourselves to follow. But allowing ourselves to follow in any Vishaya Vasana is bondage. It creates more karma, and it keeps us bound to this cycle of samsara. If we want to free ourselves from samsara, we need to avoid allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya Vasanas. How to avoid being swayed by our Vishaya Vasanas? Only by clinging to I am. So the only way out of this problem, this mess we've got ourselves in, we've got ourselves in a huge mess, but there's a very simple way out. Hold on to I am. If you hold on to I am, you're then not swayed by your Vishaya Vasanas. That is, if you're swayed by your Vishaya Vasanas, you're no longer holding on to I am. So long as you're holding on to I am, you're not allowing yourself to be swayed by your Vishaya Vasanas. Thereby, the Vishaya Vasanas are being weakened and the Sat Vasana is being strengthened.
So, does that answer your question, Srikant?
Yeah, Kumar.
Thank you.
Kumar, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael, one question I do have is Ram here. What is the practical application of this prarabdha? You may have alluded to this when you just said, but in 30 seconds, can you let me know how my understanding of this prarabdha I can use in my day-to-day life?
Okay.
30 seconds. I just need a snippet of what how I should have in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. I'll try and keep it. It's difficult for me to keep it brief because we need to understand clearly. That is, whatever Bhagavan taught us has practical implication, and the practice that Bhagavan taught us is being self-attentive, holding on to I am. So, whatever Bhagavan. Any teaching of Bhagavan, when we read it, we need to try to understand how is this connected with this practice? How does this teaching help me in my practice? What he taught us about the karma theory, that is, he said, everything that we are to experience is prarabdha. Experience means so long as we allow our attention to go outwards, what we are to experience, it's all prarabdha. Why did he teach us this? We can say it for truth, that's one thing, but there's a reason why he emphasized this. He emphasized it because he wants us to understand we cannot change anything, that all the efforts we make are to experience this or to avoid experiencing that, all the external efforts we make. But what is the point of making external efforts when we cannot change anything? What we are to experience, we will experience. However much we try to avoid experiencing it. What we are not to experience, we cannot experience, however much we try to experience it. Therefore, making effort externally is futile. If we want to be, the only fruitful effort we can make is to turn our attention back within. So, when we understand that we cannot change anything, what is to happen is going to happen as it's going to happen. Nothing is going to happen that is not already destined to happen. So why should we concern ourselves with this external life? Oh no, but I've got a family to feed, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got bills to pay, I've got tax to pay, I've got so many responsibilities, we think. Yes, fine. Who has those responsibilities? The person we take ourselves to be. That person, whatever we are, this person are to experience, will be made to experience. So how we earn our money, how we provide for our family, all these things, the body, speech, that's already determined by prarabdha. And whatever we must do in order for that prarabdha to unfold, we'll be made to do. So we can leave this body, speech, and mind to Bhagavan's care. We cling on to I am. That is the aim behind all that Bhagavan taught us. If instead of holding on to I am, we allow our attention to go away from ourselves, as soon as we allow our attention away from ourselves, that is the very allowing of our attention away from ourselves is allowing ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas. As soon as we allow ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas, to the extent that we are swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, we will inevitably be doing actions of mind, speech, and body under their sway. Those actions that we do under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas are agamya, which will bear fruit and all get stored in sanchita. But now there's a huge heap of sanchita. Some people think, oh, we have to exhaust all our karma. Not in Advaita, they don't say that, but in other schools of thought, they think that we have to exhaust our past karma. We will never exhaust our past karma. There's a huge sanchita. How do we get rid of this karma? Who is the doer of karma and the experience of the fruit of karma? It's ego. If we annihilate ego, all the three karmas will be destroyed along with it. Because how can there be any agamya without ego there to do it? How can there be any sanchita or prarabdha without ego there to experience those fruit? So all three karmas are destroyed by as Bhagavan said, this small spark of jnana will consume it all like a vast heap of cotton. Because the root of it all is ego. Destroy ego, you destroy everything.
So that going inside and putting the effort, that is still something in our hands then? So everything external is already predetermined and
not
scripted.
Everything external is already. What we are to experience is predetermined. But we can try to. It may be my destiny to be very poor, to live in poverty all my life. That doesn't stop me wanting to be rich. It doesn't stop me trying to become rich. So we have freedom of will and action. We don't have freedom to change what is destined. So when Bhagavan said everything is predetermined, he's talking about what we are to experience. He doesn't mean all our actions are predetermined. So we have a choice. At every moment, we have a fundamental choice. Do we allow ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas or to be swayed by our Sattvasana? In other words, do we allow our attention to go outwards or do we allow our attention to go inward? As soon as we allow our attention to go outwards, we're then under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas. Even then we have freedom. Just because I'm under the sway of Vishaya vasanas doesn't mean that I have to be swayed by this vasana or that vasana. I may avoid being swayed by this vasana and instead be swayed by that vasana, but we're still being swayed by Vishaya vasanas. So long as our attention moves away from ourselves, we are under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas. That doesn't mean we are bound by them. Vasanas means inclination, so we can follow this inclination or that inclination. For example, we may like to eat laddus, for example, very sweet and tasty laddus. But we know if we eat too many laddus, we're going to make ourselves sick. So though we have an inclination to eat laddus, we control ourselves. Okay, I'll have one laddu now. But if we yield ourselves to that vasana to eat laddus, we'll eat 10 laddus and make ourselves sick. So we are always balancing. That is, we have inclinations pulling us in so many different directions. We can choose whether to follow this inclination, whether to follow the inclination to eat laddus, or to follow the inclination to avoid eating too many laddus.
Yeah. So to sort of put together Srikant's question and Ram's question. So prarabdha only deals with the experience, what you destined to experience.
Yes, it's karma phala. Phala means
Exactly.
the fruit. The fruit is what is to be experienced.
Right. And so each moment we do have a choice. There is a freedom to respond to our Visaya Vasana or to our Satvasana.
That is the fundamental freedom we have, is whether to allow ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya Vasanas or Sattvasana. In other words, whether to turn our attention inwards or allow it to go outwards. That we have that is the fundamental choice. If we allow our attention to go outwards, then we still have choice. Because there's so many vasanas pulling us in so many different directions. Whether we allow ourselves to be swayed by this vasana or that vasana, it's up to us. This is the freedom of will, and that freedom of will leads to a freedom of action. Because I can either eat more laddus or I can avoid eating more laddus.
Right.
But the thing is, people want to know, are you saying eating laddus, is that under your will? But supposing it's your prarabdha to eat 10 laddus, okay, one day you'll yield yourself to your greed for laddus and you'll eat 10. That is, the actions we do are driven by two forces, by our will and by God's will. God's will is making us act in such a way that we will experience our prarabdha. That we cannot avoid. Right. But while our own will is also acting, so we cannot distinguish which action or to what extent any action is driven by our will and to what extent it's driven by the will of God in accordance with our prarabdha. So supposing today I really have a strong liking for laddus and I yield to the liking to eat and I eat 10 laddus and I make myself sick. Okay, my being sick, that must have been part of my prarabdha. I couldn't have experienced being sick if it weren't my prarabdha. But I can't say, oh, it's not my fault that I ate 10 laddus, it's my prarabdha, because I ate those 10 laddus not only because it was my prarabdha, that's in accordance with my prarabdha, but I also did it because I had a liking. So often what we experience in accordance with prarabdha is what we like to experience. So the actions that give rise to that are actions we're doing by our will as well as being driven by God. So we cannot distinguish, and we need not distinguish, because Bhagavan didn't ask us to try to distinguish agamya from those actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas and those actions that we are made to do by God. We cannot and need not know that. What we need to do is to try to turn our attention within so that we are not swayed by any vasanas at all. In which case, the actions of our mind, speech, and body, if we turn within and hold firmly to I am without allowing our mind to go outward, whatever actions may be done by our mind, speech, and body are actions that are according to God's will, actions that God is making us do in accordance with our prarabdha. That is surrendering our will to God's will. Let you take care of this body, speech, and mind. They're no concern of mine. Let me cling to I am. That is surrendering our will to His. But if we allow our attention to come outwards, instead of surrendering to His will, we're surrendering to our will.
Thank you, Michael. So I think it's a huge, dense topic, and Michael has written a long article in Happiness of Being blog.
but it's not actually. It's extremely simple. That is, Bhagavan has clearly. I mean, what Bhagavan says about these three karmas, agamya, sanchita, and prarabdha, that's a basic teaching in Vedanta. Bhagavan has just made it very clear. Those actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas, those are agamya. Those agamya bear fruit, which get stored in sanchita, and a selection of those fruit we experience as prarabdha. The problem is people want to know, because people allow their mind to go outwards. They then want to know, is this action agamya or is it prarabdha? Right? This is the usual question people keep on asking, but it's not. They're missing the point. Why Bhagavan taught this karma theory? To make us understand that we cannot change anything that is destined to happen. So let it happen as it's meant to happen. That's all according to the will of God. Our aim is to turn within and cling to ourselves. So people who go on asking questions about this, the law of karma, they're missing the point. The whole point is, Bhagavan is trying to simplify things. You need not think about these things, because what is going to happen, whatever you're destined to experience, you're going to experience. And so long as you allow your attention to go outwards, you will inevitably be doing agamya. You need not worry about, is this action agamya, that. Because you've allowed your attention to be swayed by your Vishaya vasanas to a greater or lesser extent, that is, to the extent we allow ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas, we are thereby doing agamya. If we want to avoid doing agamya, we don't need to know whether this action is agamya or that action. We need to know we shouldn't allow our attention to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas. We should cling firmly to I am.
Right. So there is one last question that I would like to ask. Our questioner wishes to say anonymous. How will I know when I am attending to myself? That's the main question. And then she goes on to add, right now, when I'm attending to I am, it feels that I'm doing so from the perspective of a located body on a chair and the sensation in the head. But the question is, how will I know when I'm attending to myself?
So long as we rise as ego, our awareness of ourself is mixed up with awareness of adjuncts. So now, instead of being aware of ourselves as just as I am, we're aware of ourselves as I am this person. When we are practicing self-investigation, we are trying to turn our attention and to focus only on I am. The more we hold on to I am, the more the adjuncts will drop off. But it's not a simple matter of, am I attending to myself or not? Yes, if you're attending to I am, you are attending to yourself. But we're only partially attending to ourselves. We're not completely letting go of other things. To explain this, attending to other things, we're facing outwards. Our aim is to turn 180 degrees, so to speak. This is, of course, it's not, this is a crude way of explaining it, but it's a simple way of explaining it. Our aim is to turn our attention away from all other things, back towards ourselves, 180 degree turn. That is what we are trying to achieve. When we turn 180 degrees, our entire attention is on ourselves, so we're not aware of anything else. When we're not aware of anything else, we're aware of ourselves as pure awareness. When we're aware of ourselves as pure awareness, ego is thereby annihilated. So we need to turn 180 degrees, and even one moment of turning 180 degrees, the story is over. We can't turn back again, because ego is thereby destroyed and only pure awareness remains. So it's not a matter of, am I attending to myself or not, but how keenly and intensely am I attending to myself? We cannot force this. Why we don't attend to ourselves more keenly? Because of the strength of our Vishaya vasanas. So during this practice, we are trying to turn within. We're trying to attend to I am as keenly as we can. But because we are not willing to let go of other things, we are not attending to ourselves keenly enough yet. In other words, we're not turning a full 180 degrees. We may be turning 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees. We may even be turning 170 degrees. We need not be concerned about that. Our only aim is we try to focus on I am, hold on to I am more and more, and other things will slowly, slowly drop off. Because the other things remain so long as we hold to them. And now I'm practicing self-attention, but I still seem to be this body. I still seem to be here. I'm still aware of these things around me. So my self-attentiveness is only partial. I need to go deeper and deeper into this self-attention. But we shouldn't think partial self-attention is useless. It's very valuable to hold on to at least a certain degree of self-attentiveness. This is what Bhagavan refers to in that sentence in the 11th paragraph of Nana that I referred to earlier, where he used the term swarupa smarana. Swarupa smarana means remembrance of ourselves. So even in the midst of other activities, we can be holding on to a tenuous degree of self-remembrance. We can be holding on to I am at least 5% or 10%. We may not be 100%. We may not be turning 180 degrees, but we can at least be trying to avoid forgetting that fundamental awareness I am. The more we do that during the course of the day, the easier it will be for us to go deep within. In other words, the further we'll be able to turn at times when we're not engaged in other activities. So we all know I am. So are you attending to I am or not? You alone can say whether you're attending to I am. But some people get confused at the early stages. They say, I can't find I. Well, because they think they're still looking for some object. Because we're so used to attending to objects, we want to find some object called I. And so we say, oh, I looked within, but I couldn't find anything called I. But who is that is one I looking for another I. But the I who is looking is the I that we should be holding on to. So there's never a moment when we are not aware of ourselves. We just need to be attentively aware of ourselves. Instead of allowing our attention to be diverted away from other things, we need to hold on to self-attentiveness. We need to try to be more and more aware just of this fundamental awareness I am.
Right. Thank you, Michael.
The more we do it, the clearer it becomes.
Right.
Then there we know. It'll be clear to us, but we're only doing this partially, but we'll have no doubt about it. Am I doing this correctly or not?
So there's one question. That's been running in my mind for the last few days, and you answered it. And that is this whole classification of karma as 3 different types. It's sort of a misnomer. That really is only one karma, which is agamya, and the other 2 are just phala, the fruits of it. Thank you. There is another question related to this verse, and that is, so when we leave aside the external phenomena, this and 16 together, and sometimes people start that way, like in yoga and all, like they try to block the thoughts, right? And then they come to a state where there are no thoughts. And then they stay there for as long as they can, and then they assume that they got it. That's it. So that is they refer to that as samadhi sometimes. And then it occurred to me that also should be called a vishayavasana. That state also, because it is not oneself. It's not ourself, right? That state when there is a blank, there is nothing, there is no thoughts, but at the same time, it's not your focus. It's not on awareness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, if we really withdraw our attention from all other things, without being keenly self-attentive, we go into a state like sleep. That's a state of manolaya. What is called nirvikalpa samadhi is a state of manolaya. That is, yogis, by pranayama and other techniques, they become so skillful at withdrawing their mind from other things. When their mind is withdrawn from other things, they subside into manolaya because they're not holding on to themselves. They're just withdrawing their mind from other things. As Bhagavan said, manolaya is just a state like sleep. It is of no more spiritual value than a state than sleep. And to illustrate that, he used to tell the story of the yogi who went into nirvikalpa samadhi for 300 years on the bank of a Ganga, And when he woke up, the first thing he asked for was, where's my water? Because Bhagavan said the most superficial thought, the last thought that was in his mind when he went into that Nirvikalpa Samadhi was the first thought that came when he came out again. That means not even the most superficial thought is destroyed. So the vasanas all remain intact in Manolaya. So that is not our aim. Generally, when people say, I was meditating for 20 minutes and I didn't have any thoughts, that is not Manolaya. They're not in a sleep-like state. They're still aware because they're aware of a passage of time. 20 minutes I was in that state. I didn't have any thought. What they mean by being without thought is they avoided mental chatter. Mental chatter is only one form of thought. According to Bhagavan, this whole world is thought. Time is thought. Space is thought. So if you say I was 20 minutes in meditation without thinking anything, that is not truly a state without thought. That may be a very pleasant state. People can experience a type of mental lull by avoiding the excessive activity of the mind. They enjoy not a complete dissolution of the mind, as in Manolaya, but a type of a peace, a lulling of the mind. That is a Vishaya. Because anything other than ourselves, even that calm state of mind, is a Vishaya. We can't say that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a Vishaya, because there's neither, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there's neither subject nor object, as in sleep. It's a state of Manolaya. The mind is completely dissolved. But in a state in which in which ego is still there, enjoying some peaceful state, that peaceful state is a Vishaya, because you've still got the subject and the object. Subject is ego, the peaceful state is the object. That is the Vishaya. So that liking to experience that peaceful state, that is a Vishaya Vasana.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I am trying to learn how to practice self-attention throughout the day. I know that sometimes you might have said we can try to do it constantly. And I have an opportunity now with my life to do, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 7 minutes throughout the day. But I'm trying to learn how to do it more constantly. You kind of alluded to it earlier about 5%, 10% all the time. So I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like. And if that's kind of what we're shooting for, is constant by really constant, if it's 5% or 10%.
Being constantly self-attentive, at least to a certain degree, to a certain extent, should be our aim. For most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, our attention keeps on getting diverted away towards other things. Whenever we notice that our attention has been diverted towards other things, we try to bring it back. It is only by patient and persistent practice that we can extend the amount of time we are at least partially self-attentive. That is what we want to extend the time. That is, we want to be self-attentive, at least to a certain degree, as much as possible throughout the day. But we also want to go as deep as possible. If we try to go deep, that's at times when we're not engaged in any other activity, when we may be sitting comfortably in a chair or lying in bed, we can try and go deeper. The deeper we try and go, the more we'll be impelled to jump outwards. Because such is the nature of the ego. It's because the ego, so long as we've got strong Vishaya vasanas are not something other, it's our inclinations that make us go outwards. So the deeper we try to go within, the more strongly we will be inclined to go outwards. Supposing you've got a beach ball, big beach ball, and you go into the beach and you go into the water and you try and push that beach ball under the water. The more you try and push it down, the more it will try and come up. You can push it down a little and keep it steadily down, just maybe a quarter submerged. But if you try and push it under it completely, the more you push it down, the more force, the more pressure it will be to rise up again. So if when you're trying to push it down, somehow it will slip over a hand and it'll pop up this side or that side or whatever. It's like that with the attention. It's relatively easy to hold on to a partial degree of self-attentiveness. But when we try to go deep within, we won't be able to go deep within for so long. The impetus to come up will be more. But so we can, both during other activities and at times when we're not engaged in other activities, we try to be self-attentive as much as possible. When we're not engaged in other activities, we may be able to go deeper within, but may not be able to hold on to that for very long. During the midst of other activities, we can't go so deeply within, or it will seem to us at first we can't go so deeply within, but at least we can, for longer durations, we'll be able to hold on to that. So how to do it, you ask? Simply by practice. The more we persevere in this practice, the more we'll be able to hold on to the self-attentiveness in the midst of other activities, and the deeper we'll be able to go within when our mind is free of other activities.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
What is actually required for the annihilation of ego, what is required is one moment of perfect self-attention, of turning the full 180 degrees. Just one moment is sufficient. Ego will thereby be destroyed and all problems will be over. But in order to get to that point, we need to persevere in this practice, trying to be self-attentive as much as possible.
Okay.
That means as deeply as possible and for as much duration as possible. We shouldn't expect the depth and duration that is, when we go deep, the duration will tend to be smaller. When we extend the duration, we'll be going less deep.
Okay. Sounds good. Great. Thank you.
Right.
Anand, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I joined a bit late, but on this question of inquiry, doing it as often as possible, I have this problem of I already want to achieve something. When I sit down, I say, today I'm going to get in, and then the mind constantly evaluates your progress in spite of warning that you should not do it. So it's like getting a 100% mark in an exam. You shoot for the 100%. And so it looks like I'm expecting a result even before, so which is not a selfless act. It should be quite a selfless, expectation-less act. But how do, again, one can turn around and ask who is setting the, find out who is setting the expectation, etc. So is that something that is unusual, or how to get out of it?
Well, I think here we can apply what Krishna said in Gita. He said it in a different context, but we can apply it here. Okay. Krishna said, you have the adhikara, the right to action, not to the fruit thereof. So in this path of self-investigation, Bhagavan has shown us the way. Our only duty is to try to follow, to try to be self-attentive as much as possible. The result of our efforts to be self-attentive, let's leave that to him. If we are sincerely trying our best, because this is not only the path of self-investigation, this is also the path of surrender. So we are not doing this, and also we need to think about what Bhagavan has taught us. Bhagavan often said, for example, jnana is not a new knowledge to be attained. All you need to do, remove the ajnana, and the jnana remains. The ajnana is ego. Remove ego, and we are always that jnana. Jnana mam tāṉ-āy, Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Upadēśa. So that we are always that. So we are not trying to gain something new. We are just trying to, we are not, Bhagavan sometimes joked about the English word realization. He said, how can you realize what is already real? The problem is, we have now realized what is unreal. If all we need to do is to unrealize the unreal, and the real alone will remain. Our aim is we're trying to separate ourselves from this ego with all its ambitions. I want to attain self-realization. That there's not this ego that wants to achieve liberation or self-realization or atmanyana or whatever. That itself is the obstacle. What is called atmanyana or self-realization or moksha or whatever, that's nothing but the complete surrender of this ego. So all we have to do, this is why if we have a clear understanding of Bhagavan's teachings, these sort of problems will be less. Bhagavan has shown us the way. Bhagavan has said, he's given us assurance in the 12th paragraph of Nana. He says, Kadavalum Guruvum Unmayil Verala. God and Guru are in truth not different. Pulivayil Patadu Evaru Tirambadado, just as what has been caught in the jaws of a tiger will not return. Avare Guruvin Arulpavail Patavagal Avaral Rakshika Padavare Andri Orukalum Kaivida Pada. In exactly the same way, those who have been caught in the glance of, in the look of the Guru's grace will never be forsaken and will surely be saved by him. And then he adds an important caveat. Eninum Guru Kartiya Varipadi Tavarada Nadikavendam. Nevertheless, it is necessary to walk unfailingly in accordance with the path Guru has shown. So in this paragraph, Bhagavan has given us a very great assurance, but he still leaves some responsibility in our hands. We have to walk unfailingly on this path. So long as we are trying our best to hold on to self-attention, to hold on to I am, and thereby surrender everything else, we are doing our best to follow his path. Everything else we leave to him. Whether we are to attain moksha at this next moment, or whether we are to attain it after 100 lives or a crore of lives, doesn't matter. He's given us a task to do, which is hold on to I am. Let us do that, and let us leave everything else to him. Who is concerned about whether it's, am I going to get liberation in this lifetime, or is it going to be next lifetime, or is it going to be after 100 lifetimes? Who is concerned about this? It's only ego. We are taking liberation to be something other than ourselves. But Bhagavan said liberation is your real nature. So we need to give up this idea that there's something to be achieved. What is only at the present moment that I can attend to I. So let me follow what Bhagavan taught. Let me try and hold on to I am here and now. Let me not think about anything else. Because thinking about anything else is allowing our attention away from ourselves. So we need to apply discrimination. That is, our mind will play all sorts of tricks on us. We'll try and evaluate ourselves and everything. We can overcome such problems by just thinking about what Bhagavan has taught us and discriminating and not giving room to such thoughts.
Okay, thanks so much.
Our only aim, if we're honest with ourselves, I don't think there's a person here who can put their hand up and say, I'm following this to the best of my ability. We are all falling far, far short. But we may not be falling to the best of our ability, but at least let us follow a little. Let us try as much as possible to be self-attentive. Because we've all got strong Vishaya vasanas, our mind will keep on going out and going here and there and thinking this and that and worrying and creating problems for ourselves and everything. But Bhagavan has given us a refuge. He said, if you want to be free of all these things, cling to I am. If we want to cast off all our cares, all our concerns, all our desires, everything, all our fears, here and now, cling to I am. The next moment, those vasanas may again drag us outwards. turn back again. To whom are all these problems? To whom is all this outside world that looks so attractive? To me, turn back within. So we just simple. But Bhagavan was, when Bhagavan was asked, is there any sign of progress in this path? Bhagavan said, the only sign of progress is perseverance. So long as we are persevering, we are on the path, we're going in the right direction. That's all that matters. We need not be concerned about anything else.
Thanks so much.
Right.
Thank you, Michael.